Whatever you are, be a good one. Abraham Lincoln. The virtue of diligence. What happens when you start trying to understand the ancient meaning and roots of the word diligence is that there are a lot more resources and commentaries on its medieval opposite, the vice of sloth, acedia, than the virtue. In many ways, this is no different than people's interest in Dante's Inferno, far outpacing their interest in his Purgatorio or Paradiso. When we hear the word diligent, most of us think of the modern dictionary definition: hardworking or persistent, careful in work. The Hebrew phrase harusim, which is sometimes translated as of the diligent in Proverbs, highlights the hardworking aspect of diligence, as in, the hand of the diligent makes rich, the hand of the diligent will rule, and the soul of the diligent is made fat. But to stop there and say we know what diligence means is a mistake, because hard work pointed at ignoble things is not diligence. It is its opposite, sloth. As a word in the English lexicon, diligence is derived from the Latin verb diligere, which means to value or esteem highly, or to love. Here we see a definition in sync with an understanding of diligence as sloth's opposite. If sloth is the indifference toward the true, good, and beautiful, diligence is the love or highly valuing of some excellent things that sloth neglects or forgets. We get still more insight into the multidimensional meaning of the word diligence from another Hebrew word that sometimes gets translated as diligent in Proverbs, mahir, which can also be translated as skilled, ready, or prompt, as in, see a man diligent in his business, he shall stand before kings. Taking all of this context together, we can come up with a definition of diligence, the capital virtue, that looks something like this. Diligence is 1. Proper attention and preparation. 2. Executed in a timely, efficient, and effective manner. 3. Done consistently over a long period of time. Diligence is an active energy and a zeal and well-doing that does not stop when it grows tired. It is the carrying out of one's responsibilities with care and attention as a way of showing love or devotion to a craft or cause. It is the key ingredient of any great opus, consisting of insight, action, and endurance that produces all good works. Perhaps this proposed definition is best understood as the chief attribute of a good gardener or a good shepherd. A good gardener is diligent in tending to his garden, first tilling soil and planting seeds, then watering plants, removing weeds, and warding off predators until what was planted is in full bloom, and his garden flourishes as a result. The garden of the slothful, by contrast, withers. Quote, I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding, and lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Proverbs 22:30-31. As with the excellent gardener, so too with the good shepherd, who must be diligent with their sheep, leading them on long journeys through pastures, corralling the ones that stray constantly, keeping watch over flock by night, and fighting off predators when they came. Maybe Solomon even had his father David in mind when writing in Proverbs that the mahir, the diligent or skilled, ready, and prompt, shall stand before kings, just as his skilled shepherd father had stood before Saul, ready and prepared to take on Goliath, in part because of his long obedience in the pasture. Maybe his memory recalled how Joseph, sold into slavery but steadfast in his faith, was eventually brought before Pharaoh for his gift of prophecy and ability to interpret dreams. Or maybe he even had himself, standing before Queen Sheba after devoting his life to wisdom in mind, standing before kings. Whoever he or his scribes had in mind, their examples embody what it meant to be diligent and illustrate the immovable truth that a man diligent in his business shall stand before kings. Why is this true of the diligent? Why does it elevate us to the throne? Because diligence distinguishes. It sets us apart from the masses who default to the path of least resistance and care more about the rewards than the work. While others fight to be noticed, the diligent are sought out by people in positions of authority or prominence. Their achievements become bright stars that give off so much light that they draw the attention of all around them. Stephen Scott, The Richest Man Who Ever Lived. There's a story about Benjamin Franklin I love that further illustrates the eternal prophecy of Proverbs 22:29. See a man diligent in his business, he shall stand before kings. It comes from Good Stories for Great Birthdays by Francis Jenkins Olcott. Benjamin Franklin, when a boy, used to work in his father's shop at the sign of a blue ball. His father was a tallow chandler and made soap and candles. The boy got up early, cut wicks for candles, filled molds with tallow, ran errands, and tended shop. At home his father instilled, "Seest thou a man diligent in his calling, he shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men." In his teenage years, because he liked books, he was apprenticed to his brother James, who had set up a printing press in Boston. To James's house he went, taking with him his collection of precious volumes. There he worked hard by day and read and studied at night, recollecting his father's favorite proverb, "Seest thou a man diligent in his calling, he shall stand before kings." Franklin saved his money and worked early and late. When James began to issue a newspaper, Franklin helped him print it and delivered copies to customers. He wrote articles under the name Silence Dogood and slipped them under the printing house door, and James published them, without knowing who was their author. Later, Franklin wrote clever, audacious, and humorous articles on the questions of the day, which were widely read and much talked about. So things continued until he was 17 years old, when Franklin took passage on a sloop bound for New York. Arriving at New York, he found no employment there and he went on to Philadelphia. Early in the morning of an October day, young Benjamin Franklin, 17 years old and seeking his fortune, reached Philadelphia. He was tired and hungry, and he had only $1 to his little fund left. Young Benjamin Franklin found work in a printer shop. In a few years, he owned his own printing press. He became a well-known printer. He issued an influential newspaper and published Poor Richard's Almanac. He was industrious, studious, thrifty, and prosperous. In time, he became the most famous and learned citizen of Pennsylvania and a great American patriot. When the American colonies rose against the exactions of England, Benjamin Franklin was called upon to serve his country as a diplomat in France and England. "My father," wrote Franklin, "having among his instructions to me when a boy frequently repeated the proverb, 'Seest thou a man diligent in his calling, he shall stand before kings, he shall not stand before mean men.' I from thence considered industry as a means of obtaining wealth and distinction, which encouraged me, though I did not think that I should ever literally stand before kings, which however has since happened, for I have stood before 5, and even had the honor of sitting down with one, the King of Denmark, to dinner." Diligence of this type is rare because it is contrary to human nature. It requires constant or consistent effort when little or no progress is visible. It is a long path to abundance, increasingly untraveled in an on-demand age of instant gratification, where we grow used to getting more, faster, and with less effort. This is why those seeking diligence distinguish themselves and stand out on a path with few travelers. Diligence takes pride in doing the things that nobody wants to do. Diligence lives in the work that most people avoid, because they know that's where the magic is and where the transformation occurs. Diligence holds the whip and spurs and drives us on when we want to give up. It is a commitment to the work long after the will to work has gone. It is a devotion to the quality even if the odds are that nobody will notice. It is a love of the noble that works for an eternal audience. In law school, I loved being the only one at the library on a Saturday morning. The entire place, a dark abandoned building except for 1 or 2 lit up library rooms. I knew it meant I was doing what others were avoiding. I don't say this to elevate myself. I say it because I'm not exceptionally gifted intellectually. The diligence drilled into me at an early age by loving parents deserves the credit for my graduating law school, second in my class, summa cum laude. We must hold our souls at attention, and when something that needs tending to announces itself to us, we must be swift to act without hesitation or delay. We must be willing to do that over and over out of love for the craft or cause we're working on or with. This might require finding new crafts and causes if the ones currently in your life are empty and hollow and incapable of putting you in the presence of the transcendent. Because diligence does not work on empty things. It will be hard, and it will be hard for a long time. Much longer than you want it to be. All things worth having are, but it will also be worth it. Every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears spilled along the noble way waters the seeds of great fruit. That is the promise and prophecy of Proverbs 22:29, and I'm betting on it with my life. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap, if we do not lose heart.